Tantalus Entertainment presents the Killer Score Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Killer Score, the podcast that looks at cult classic films with phenomenal soundtracks and talks all about them to you. I am your host, Daulton Morrison, also known online as Sick Jacket Man. You can find me at various places with that handle, including Twitter and YouTube. Content coming up very soon on the YouTube channel. I'm going to pass it off to my co-hosts, and this episode we will be looking at Black Dynamite. But first, let's hear from them.
Hi, I'm Erin Murray. You can find me online as, Nair Murray on Instagram and, almost said TikTok. No, on Twitter. You can also find my business, Witch and Crafts, on Facebook, witchandcrafts.com, and TikTok.
Hello everyone, I am still just as excited as the last time we recorded, beyond words. This is Richard Eckert, Richard's Rad Voices, etc., etc. But before we transition to my futile attempts to contain said excitement, I'd like to announce that the Outsiders comic dub is still up, and I just did a short little demo in the form of another comic dub for a excerpt from a Batman comic. It's a Tuesday special, if you catch my drift.
Alright, so today we will be covering the very, very cult classic film Black Dynamite, directed by Scott Sanders, with music by Adrian Yunge. And I really wanted to put an emphasis this time around on the fact that comedy is very hard to pull off well in film form. Like, there's basically a format and cheat sheets for television comedy. I mean, television comedy is basically sitcoms, and there's a lot of cheat sheets for sitcoms, but comedy films are a lot harder to nail and pull off, especially hyper-specific parodies like this film. It's not even parodying a specific film, it's parodying the genre of blaxploitation films, specifically the so bad it's good variety of blaxploitation, which many would argue covers a lot of the genre.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
We're talking stuff like Foxy Brown, Coffee, and most especially Dolomite.
Yeah.
Yep.
Black Tornado, Black Belt Jones is another big inspiration for this one.
Yep.
Wheat straw.
Yeah. Basically, Scott Sanders, the writer and director of this film, and his friends, along with actor Michael Jai White, who he had gotten to know from working on the 1998 Alec Baldwin film Thick as Thieves, they would have film watch parties. Specifically, they loved watching blaxploitation films, and they would point out all the little inconsistencies and laugh at them. And it got Sanders inspired. Sanders had already been a prominent writer for black TV. He had written for the Wayans Brothers show, Rock, and A Different World. So, you know, he had really cut his teeth on black comedy, but he wanted to cut his teeth on a very specific part of black film history.
And who better to star and help write the very specific martial arts-centric blaxploitation movie than Michael Jai White, himself a trained MMA fighter and stuntman, most famous probably prior to all this for being the first black superhero star as Spawn. Flawed movie, and I'm not gonna say that it's a technically good film at all, but it's always been a guilty pleasure of mine, just because I love Michael Jai White, and I think he was a perfect pick for Al Simmons.
Honestly, I would say the biggest weakness of that film was that it really could have used more practical effects.
Yep.
Yeah.
Imagine what they could have done if they took like a Tim Burton approach to, say, Spawn's chains.
Mm-hmm.
Make them all Ray Harryhausen-ish and stop-motion-y.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of Black Dynamite. It's probably one of my favorite comedies, I would say. In my opinion, easily one of the best comedies of the 2000s, and it doesn't get talked about that as such enough.
Because interestingly enough, most people that I have talked to about Black Dynamite think that it was either a movie of that era instead of an outright modern parody, or they think that I'm referring to the admittedly bonkers and hilarious animated series from Adult Swim. Check that out if you haven't seen it. It's got a lot of great anime-esque art, some outrageous and really ribald parodies of 1970s culture and pop culture icons. That Michael Jackson episode alone had me laughing for hours.
Yeah. I think part of what really makes this work, too, is all the work that went into the production, which I really want to make clear on this. Adrian Yunge, the composer, who most of you would probably know best for some of his album work. He's worked with several of the members of the Wu-Tang Clan after this. He did work with RZA and Ghostface Killer. And I saw he did some stuff with CeeLo Green as well. But what I think most of our audience would know him for is he actually did the score for the Netflix Luke Cage TV show.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. And before this, he was kind of an unknown. He was a small, independent guy. And this kind of blew up his career afterwards for composing work because, well, it's a very good score. It really captures the era.
Name a show or movie that has a goal to be a sort of neo-blaxploitation sort of story, and he's probably done a score for it. And this was, again, the end of the Amelie episode was just, what other reaction could I have, man? Because, number one, I didn't see it coming. Had I known we were definitely going to do a Black History Month episode, I definitely would have picked, say, The Harder They Fall, maybe next year. But hearing, number one, that was your pick on the spot, and number two, that Erin was going to be introduced to it for the first time, just made my day.
Yeah, I've never actually seen Black Dynamite. I'm actually not that familiar with blaxploitation movies, outside of the Netflix movie Daulton Is My Name.
Yeah, fantastic film. See that if you have.
Oh, that movie is so great.
Probably would cover it had we not all seen it before.
Oh,
yeah.
You've seen it finally?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which itself is just more like, it's a movie about making a movie.
Yeah.
Starring Eddie Murphy as Rudy Ray Moore. But I'm not that familiar with the blaxploitation genre, to be honest. Considering I've only seen a few things here and there. But I am excited to see Black Dynamite. I haven't seen any clips or anything from it. Daulton and Richie have mentioned it quite a bit. And I've heard Daulton quote it at random several times.
She's also been privy to my hilariously awful bullhorn impression, too, so...
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I'm bored and I just say to myself, but Black Dynamite, I sell drugs to the community. One of the greatest lines and line deliveries in film history, in my opinion.
Which we will discuss because there's a story behind that, but why a delay, honestly?
Yeah, the only other thing I want to mention is that this film is a rarity in another way, in that it was actually funded through a concept trailer, which is incredibly rare in the industry.
Oh yeah,
it's looked down upon greatly, actually. One of the only other big famous examples I could think of something that got sold through concept trailers is that new Bel Air TV show.
Yeah, which was based on like a fan film.
Yeah, and also It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes.
That was also pitched through that. And last thing before we get into it is what really makes this film work as well is they keep in production errors that don't break the film, that also they believed made it funnier, and put in deliberate errors. And they also shot it on old Super 16 film stock before converting it to digital to accurately get the look of films of the era.
And rest assured, I will be gushing about that once we pop this sucker onto our screen.
All right, so without further ado, let's get right into Black Dynamite. And hey, we are back. We just finished watching Black Dynamite. This was my second watch of this, I want to say. How about you, Rich?
Also second. And just like with before, just when I thought I was going to get through this with a straight face, boom. Just gut punch after gut punch of laughter.
Oh yeah, like they really nail the technical aspect of this film, which is what makes it shine so much.
Oh, definitely.
The fact that it looks of the era so much, the fact that some actors are clearly given the directions to act worse than other ones.
The fact that they nailed the practical effects and the camera work for the action scenes.
And scenes where they tried to make it look like really cheap with like the boom mic in the frame or using stock footage.
Yeah. And what's great is they have a bunch of well shot, well executed action in the film, but they know how to make it shitty enough and when to make it shitty for maximum comedic effect.
It really is a testament to control in that regard, because in spite of invoking a lot of stylistically bad creative choices, they do actually fit in bizarrely good choreography and stunt work and even some decent effects.
Adrian Young's score? Can we talk about that?
Oh, that was so much fun.
He said he was inspired by like things like Enrico Morricone film scores,
which tracks considering that composer's love of horn sections.
Yeah,
yeah.
And he said Curtis Mayfield was another really big inspiration for it.
Once again, those trumpets.
Mm-hmm. He said that he looked at like the film scores that like they did along with a few other people, and he also made a point that he wanted every single song in the movie to have lyrics. And I love the fact that the lyrics are so on the nose,
just so expository.
Yeah, and they're just like unnecessary exposition, which makes it even funnier.
Which, well, to be fair, is very consistent with the dialogue, which loves to comedically repeat
Loop back
information that is hammered thoroughly into the brains of its audience.
Did you know Black Dynamite's brother Jimmy is on drugs?
Did you know he was an orphan?
Did you know that Black Dynamite's brother Jimmy died after he promised his mom that he wouldn't let his brother die?
There's
On
absolutely
drugs.
there is absolutely no chance that you will miss any of that, because that joke is as constant as it is consistently funny.
No, Aaron, he specifically promised his mother on his deathbed that he wouldn't let Jimmy end up on drugs or dead. Which is one of the funniest jokes to me, because, like, yeah, he's just supposed to prevent death, I guess.
Like, yeah. Like, he's so badass that he could do that.
Yeah. In fact, I think the reason this is one of the biggest cult films we've covered is because this film, like many cult films, was a financial disaster.
Just money down the hole there.
Yeah, the film cost almost $3 million to make.
Which is kind of on the cheaper end.
Yeah, and is
Hollywood, yeah.
Yeah, and was an independent production.
Yeah.
By small companies, and it was distributed at a smaller scale because of that. But this film actually did really well on festival circuits, like acclaim-wise, like people like praised it.
When I looked up this movie, one of the things that they I noticed when I looked it up on Wikipedia it was a success at like Sundance.
Yeah.
Yep.
It got a lot of rave screenings at like film festivals before its official release. However, on official release, it bombed. It only made like $200,000.
Oof.
Yeah. But once again, it was one of those films that was saved over the years by word of mouth, and no doubt by the Adult Swim cartoon adaptation, which brought more attention to the original film.
Yes. And it's a very different beast from the movie in a lot of ways, but they kept a lot of the same spirit, same
actors.
Same color grades, all of the same score.
Yeah.
And that said, I do believe that we are owed a full first impressions from our co-host.
I'm going to pass it over to Erin. We will try to avoid spoilers when we're first just talking about our initial impressions of the film from now on. When we get into spoiler territory, we will let you know. That way you can skip ahead.
And I will timestamp it.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so passing it off to Miss Murray to see how she liked it.
Okay, I actually had a lot of fun with this movie. I didn't really know what to expect outside of what Daulton and Richie told me. Like, they were like, oh, it's funny. It's a parody of blaxploitation movies. And I'm like, a genre I'm not familiar with. But I had a lot of fun with this movie. I was laughing my ass off about 70% of the movie, which is a really good sign. And considering there are some comedies I've seen where I'm like, really? But this movie's actually really fucking funny. One of my favorite parts, and this isn't a spoiler because it comes up a million times, with the score, is every time Black Dynamite makes an appearance, you just hear the score go, Dynamite!
Yeah. Every time he makes his first appearance in the scene, they do it, and it's always funny.
Yep. They keep that in for the animated series as well, and I gotta say, too, it always warms my heart to see such consistent laughter out of the two of you. Erin especially, I don't know if... I don't know if you're gonna take this the wrong way or anything, Erin, but I don't see you, like, visibly react super often.
Yeah.
But and don't take that as a bad thing, I think. But this movie had you a few times. I'm like, yay!
Yeah.
Just enjoying her organic fits of laughter in between everything.
Yeah. I love the score. The score was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
As we mentioned before, with how it basically gives more exposition that's not really needed. I love, one of the things that I mentioned a second ago was how cheap they made the movie look by using things like stock footage and a couple scenes where you can see a boom mic just floating above the actors' heads.
Yeah, and as I stated earlier, the way they made the film look so authentic is they filmed it on the Super 16 Kodak film before just doing a digital port of the footage. Yeah.
Yep.
So they used actual of-the-time film stock to make sure it looked authentic.
And I think it's pretty impressive that they still made it look great by modern standards, even while they had intentionally limited themselves.
Yeah, and they said they actually specifically used that film stock because that was a lot of the film stock that black filmmakers used for blaxploitation film, which gave it that saturated look that a lot of the genre has.
That whole sun tinge effect is especially prominent in stuff like Dolomite and the Human Tornado.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to say about it?
Love the action scenes were a lot of fun. Like, all the fight scenes are great to look at. Some of them are choreographed better than others. But my favorite is when they replaced that one actor because the actor actually accidentally got slapped in real life. And they were like, motherfucker, and then you just
smash cut to a
different actor. I love that.
It's one of my favorite jokes. It's one of the best visual gags in the entire film.
And they do that thing too where the film reel skips.
Yeah.
In between.
Yeah.
Motherfucker.
Yeah.
And
it
just
chef's kiss.
Yes.
Yes. Chef's kiss.
And speaking of action scenes, I've got to say that this isn't spoilery just yet. I appreciate the nunchucks gags so much because,
Yeah.
let me tell you, someone who goes in and out of martial arts training myself, nunchucks are the type of thing where you are going to be nervous at all times on whether or not you're going to smack yourself in the head.
And the fact that they made the joke that the character that Michael Jai White is portraying, the actor who is playing Black Dynamite, that's specifically how he was directed. They were like, you're portraying this fictional actor portraying Black Dynamite. So Michael Jai White deliberately looks nervous every time he uses the nunchucks and is always like blinking and squinting when he's using them, like
All the
worried
time.
about hitting himself. It is hilarious.
I mean, even if someone was more experienced with nunchucks, I feel like they'd be blinking a lot either way.
Yeah, I use them. I've been swinging nunchucks around since I was like 8, and I still am. My eyes are following the other end of those sticks because I'm like, oh boy, come on, Rich, catch
Don't
it.
hit yourself in the face.
And then I do that thing where I'm like, catch it in the armpit, and I'm like, nailed it.
Yeah. And the stock footage jokes are always great. 2 cars exploding, they use the exact same stock footage scene. And the best part is, I think you guys know what I'm talking about, because if you're thinking of stock footage of a car going down a hill and exploding, it's that stock footage.
Yep.
They literally use the most common stock footage of a car going down the hill and exploding.
Same lighting, same angle, same long hill, same everything. You think of it, it's there.
The only way it could have been more stock footage is if they used the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah. Which I'm surprised never pops
How
up in the
haven't
film.
they?
I feel like they felt it would be too obvious.
On the nose.
Yeah.
Probably too
Because,
obvious.
like we've alluded to, it does walk a fine line between deliberate ineptitude and calculated quality.
Comedy. Yeah. This film, they even, like, they kept in flubs, but only if it enhanced the movie. Like, if someone just completely broke character in a way that was, like, obvious,
Like if someone's corpsing.
yeah, it's not going to be kept in. But if it's, like, an accident, they kept it in because that's funny. Like, not a spoiler, but there's a scene where, like, someone jumps out of a car and the car keeps going and you can see the actor's face of, like, oh, God, oh, wait, I gotta stop that.
Yeah. They're like, oh shit, it's still on drive, and you can see one of the guys taking cover behind it going like, go with it, go with it.
Yeah, it's very funny. It feels and it fits with, like, what they're going for. I really admire that about this film. It's such a hard line because people love So Bad It's Good, but the problem is trying to make So Bad It's Good media.
It's very difficult.
It is, because you try to find line, and not only that, but by making a So Bad It's Good product, you kind of miss out on the magic a bit.
Case in point, like Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other film I can really think of, also an obscure comedy that really nailed this, was The Lost Skeleton of Cadavlara, I believe it's called. It's a 2001 comedy film that's basically a spoof of low-budget 50s and 60s horror films.
See, one thing I'm learning every episode is that Killer Score is like a bid to see how many times Richie and Daulton will out-movie each other.
Cadabra.
Yeah, The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra. That's a fun one to check out if you guys haven't seen it. They filmed it and re-shot it. They filmed it and then they put it through a black and white filter to make it look like a film of the era. Obviously, it didn't have as much production work put into it as this one, but it's still great. The titular skeleton of the film is clearly like a store-bought skeleton. You know.
One of those like Halloween decoration
Exactly.
skeletons.
And they don't, and you know, they make it pretty obvious. Like, they don't put on like a price tag or anything, but they don't dress it up to make it look like an old skeleton like it's supposed to be, you know?
Which, of course, brings us back to that aforementioned charm of Black Dynamite, which is that almost perfect balance. Like, I don't know how quite to describe it, but
It's cheap when it needs to be.
Yes. It's cheap when it needs to be, and it's also showy when it needs to be, because
Exactly.
as has been established by the intro, Michael Jai White knows his shit when it comes to acting, to comedy, and especially to martial arts.
In fact, Scott Sanders joked about the movie, and as did Michael Jai White. They thought a problem with it was they might have actually made it a little too badass.
I mean, like, this movie works not only because of how gut-bustingly hilarious it is, but how well it actually works as just a fun piece of action cinema.
There's not a single weak scene in it. It knows when to go. It knows when to cut. It knows when to hold a little too long for maximum comedy. It really just nails the fact that with a good so bad it's good movie, you have to have technical foibles.
Yes. And in service to that, you have Michael Jai White's impressive facial acting.
Yeah.
Because, as Daulton mentioned before, there were moments that they had deliberately hung on shots too long.
And you can just see Michael Jai White look uncomfortable, or like his eyes dart around.
His eyes will dart around, his face will contort like he smelled something bad, and there's just you could basically...
And it's always so quick. They don't like do it in a gag where it's like it holds too long, or they do the cliche.
It's like a second or two's worth of
and they
footage.
don't do the cliche of cut. They never do that.
Yeah.
Which is what really sells.
It's like you can see him saying it with his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, cut.
Cut the
Cut.
film.
Yeah.
Quit rolling.
And I think what speaks to the majesty of this film is the fact that I'm able to accurately say why it's funny and how I find it funny, because comedy, in my opinion, is one of the hardest things to praise and describe, because what are you going to say other than I laughed a lot, I found it very entertaining. But with this film, you can really nail down what makes it entertaining.
Yeah, and I'd say that in Black Dynamite's case, it's its own self-awareness.
Yes, it's self-aware, it gives you little winks, but it's never so on the head that it becomes obnoxious.
Yeah, like if I'm so sorry to use it as an example again. If Joss Whedon did that sort of B-movie kind of thing, like
It would be insufferable.
It'd be insufferable, and I say this as someone who likes parts of Dr. Horrible. That was part of the problem I had with it. It's that it's hanging over the head like, this is a superhero parody.
Yeah.
This is, look how cheesy we are, wink.
Look how low budget this is.
Like, and at that point,
It's like, yeah, we get it. You made it during a writer's strike.
like, and at first it is funny, but then, like, movie saying it's not good just sort of loops around to that movie not being good.
The problem with Dr. Horrible is it doesn't know what it wants to be. It's simultaneously too on the nose, goes on too long, but doesn't go on long enough.
Like, it's only 45 minutes in total, I think.
Yeah, but, like, it clearly doesn't know what it wants to be. The music, while good, soaks up too much of the runtime.
I mean, it is a musical, but...
Yeah.
Like, we're going off the rails, but moral of the story is Black Dynamite did that whole stylistic suck thing better, and also, I will say this, Neil Patrick Harris singing, always a treat.
Well, yeah. I mean, I imagine that's probably the whole reason they made the product. Yeah, so Black Dynamite, it was a bomb, like we said, and I feel like it doesn't get enough critical evaluation and praise. The 2000s were kind of a glut for comedy films. There wasn't a lot of great things. I can name, like, a few that I enjoyed in that. That was kind of like the worst decade for comedy, in my opinion, in a long time.
That's when the Adam Sandler rot really started to rear its head.
Not only that, but things like the first couple Scary Movie, from what I remember, aren't bad.
They're great, yeah.
But
Scary Movie 1 and 2, good stuff.
But everything after that, and all those
Yeah.
parodies of all those genre parodies, yeah, they suck.
Erin.
And
Why-
the reason I wanted to say the reason that those suck is because they can't commit to one thing or the other. Like, take the old Zucker Brother parody films. They work because they were committing to a specific thing,
Genre, series,
or even a film in the case of Airplane.
and Hot Shots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like they're like crappy versions of UHF. That's what
Yes.
those are.
And also, Erin, why did you put disaster movie back in my brain?
Eh.
You
How
know,
dare
Remember
you.
Epic Movie and Vampires Suck?
you know, if we hadn't all already seen it, I would say that we should totally watch UHF for this. But like, we've all seen it. If
Yeah.
you guys haven't seen UHF, do yourselves a favor, go watch UHF.
Classic.
It's so underrated.
What streaming service is it on? Because I can't remember. We watch it on something.
I don't know if it's available on anything anymore. I believe Shout Factory did a re-release on Blu-ray. It's readily available online for Blu-ray. If Aaron's gonna look right now to see if it's available on anything.
Weird
I'll
Al,
let you
man.
know. Yeah.
Just,
It's free on YouTube,
Oh,
Pluto, and Tubi.
okay, yeah.
And it's also on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so go check out UHF on that. It's available on a ton of streaming platforms.
so yeah, back to Black Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you mentioned Curtis Mayfield when talking about the score.
influences, yeah.
the score influences, because the expository lyrics are sung very much in the style of Curtis Mayfield. I was reminded of Move On Up more than a couple of times, because when they were
Isaac Hayes was another big inspiration.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
you could tell because of the guitar licks.
the smoky vocals, you know.
Well, they never do that whole lower register thing. It's mostly Curtis Mayfield and Sire stuff where they have that falsetto upswing.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, just
Uh,
man, I failed that one.
Okay, so I guess before we get into spoiler territories, I'm gonna do the typical thing. You guys we'll timestamp it. You can watch this right now on Amazon Prime, I saw, as well as HBO Max. That's where we watched it for this. It's also readily available on Blu-ray, DVD, and those formats. So, yeah, go check it out and pick it up yourself. Before we get into spoiler territories, since I want to avoid spoilers for this, I'll just ask favorite characters. I'll start with Richie. Richie, do you have a favorite character?
Well, Daulton, my friend, as you can plainly see, Bullhorn's the one that appeals to me.
That's fair. Bullhorn's great. I gotta
Nailed it.
I gotta go with I think I just have to go with Cream Corn because he feels so out of place in the film, and he always nails it, and his actor always nails like being awkward in the action scenes and never like quite knowing what to do.
He's kind of got like a much more subdued Chris Tucker energy to him, you know?
He does.
Like, he reminded me of a more restrained Ruby Rod from The Fifth Element.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, so passing it off to Erin now.
My favorite character outside of the protagonist Black Dynamite, because he's just hilarious, would be Gloria, because her storyline just goes all over the fucking place. And she just takes everything in stride, and I'm just like, okay then.
Yeah,
She's a great straight woman.
yeah.
She's a great straight woman, yeah.
The fact that she also feels insane because she never really reacts appropriately to things. Like, there's one out-of-character moment where Black Dynamite just goes off on one of his girls and is unbelievably cruel and, like, his, like, verbal smackdown of her. And right after that, she just goes, I trust you, Black Dynamite. I don't know why.
Keep in mind, this was after her establishing moment was her basically saying she's got no time for people like him.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the freak out is what gets her all hot and bothered over him.
So, before we get into spoilers, of course, this was Black Dynamite. If you choose to turn it off here, that's cool. Just skip back to the end so you can hear what we're going to cover next time. And let us move on into spoilers for Black Dynamite's one-man vengeance against the people who killed his brother.
Jimmy.
Yes.
The timing.
All right, now we are into the spoilers. So, this is where I'll just do the obvious spoiler thing. Favorite scene. I think my favorite scene is probably the exposition where they figure out the evil plan, because it's such a roundabout way to get back to the obvious thing of the Little Richard slogan. Like, they do all this roundabout looping showing that these pimps and hustlers are weirdly knowledgeable about cultural stuff, especially various cultures, Greek and like
Greek and Roman
mythological
mythology.
Legends.
Every one of these motherfuckers just knew random stuff about Ares and Athena.
When the zodiological calendar was formed. 785. Like, they all simultaneously say it. It's some Adam West Batman level logic, and I'm all here for it.
And then they're like, 785, that's the Topeka area code.
Which they also know for some reason.
And, I don't know. Obviously, you guys can't see it due to the lack of setup. Wink, wink, Kofi page, wink. Yeah. But Erin had her head in her hands. That was... So
that's like the funniest scene in the entire film.
Like,
everyone is on their marks perfectly. It's never not funny. Their bewilderment that the random old lady is helping assist, and like
she just pops in
every once in a while. And Black Dynamite's always like, yeah, what she said.
Let's go with that. I think the best part of that plan, though, is that it works.
Yes, they are completely right, which is what makes it even funnier.
And it segues into one of the funniest moments of practical effects ever.
So that's probably my favorite scene. Rich, what's your favorite scene in the film?
Oh, God. I'm sorry. This is going to set this thing back by a minute or so, because...
Well, if you need to think, Erin, do you know your favorite scene?
I have two.
Okay, well, we'll pass it off to Erin.
I'll have two later, but Erin, you go.
Okay, so my two favorite scenes are the beginning and the end of the movie.
Okay.
Actually, I have a lot of favorite scenes, so this is going to be hard. But one of my favorite scenes is at the beginning of the movie. I'm going to start laughing. Where after, it's like the morning after Black Dynamite has sex with all those women, and then they're just like, and then he's like, shh, be quiet. The other bitches are still sleeping. And the camera like pans out and you see like 5 other women asleep in the bed.
It's such a good game.
Another scene was the car chase scene with Cream Corn.
Oh yeah.
Cuz it's just hilarious like how they're just chasing each other, and like you see the stunt actors and all that stuff.
Cutting to locations they clearly were never at before.
My third favorite scene is the ending scene where he gets into a nunchuck fight with Richard Nixon.
Oh, it's so good.
Not making this up.
That is an actual scene in this film.
And it's played to perfection because the guy has no prosthetics on, and yet his vocal inflections are just on point.
It's also a great gag because Nixon was not the president at the time.
Nope. Vietnam War happened.
Yeah.
And they even bring up Watergate.
Yeah, and Nixon stepped down around that time, right towards the end of the Vietnam Wars.
This is some American history for some people who don't live in the U.S.
Yeah. So if they were going to be accurate, the president doing all this scheming would have been Ford, but they went with Nixon because they knew it was funnier. It's funnier.
Also, Erin, let's be honest. Are you really implying that people in the U.S. don't need this?
That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
We are the least acquainted with our own history.
That's true.
I have to remind myself that my favorite movies didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that cowboys were just boys that worked with cows.
Yeah, I mean, this is, and plus it's the 70s, a very nothing decade in American history. Like, it's one of the most glossed over things in American history for a good reason. Like, simultaneously a lot happened in America in the 70s and also nothing.
Good music though.
Yes.
Great music.
Yes, great music.
Now, Erin kinda had one of my favorite scenes in it, and I was waiting for her to mention the epilogue in case we both had it, because that nunchuck fight is just so well choreographed, so well shot. The cuts are all in the right places, and the zooms are.
Nixon's nunchucks have the fucking presidential
Yeah.
seal on them, and that
He
is
has
beautiful.
he has presidential nunchucks.
In his desk.
Yeah, like he pulls
regular
out
desk.
he pulls out a drawer and starts flipping them around. Now, my favorite scenes are, well, I also have two. One is the climax. And this one might be cheating, but every single martial arts fight, especially the opening one where he's training in his apartment,
Yeah.
and the whole plot gets kicked off by his aunt calling him about his brother, and
Her randomly crying and then stopping.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
And it just stops.
Yeah.
she goes from crying to stern like a light switch.
Drop of the hat. It is not. It is so awkward, and it works perfect.
And it's all topped off by the one of so many quotable lines in this movie. What I tell you about interrupting my kung fu?
Yeah.
Just like
Mwah.
classic. Like
You know, there's a scene which, if you haven't seen this movie yet, you're gonna think it's super dark, but it's hilarious. Is the scene at the orphanage where you see like some little kids like getting ready to shoot
oh
up
my
heroin.
god.
the kid miming shooting up heroin who doesn't have any,
And the one kid who walks up to Black Dynamite, he's like,
telling him he can hustle for him, and Black Dynamite just starts shaking him, and the kid looks legitimately terrified.
Scared, just
it's
like-
hilarious.
all right. Just like he like backs up slowly, but
I'll shake those drugs out of you if I got to. That won't work. We've already tried that.
just the implication there. Again, like I know that I'm probably being a little basic by saying that all those fights are my favorite. Oh wait, I thought of another favorite of mine.
Okay.
Yes.
The helicopter descent.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy, the White
obvious
House,
blue screen too.
the blue screen, and since we are in spoiler territories, the aforementioned smooth talker cream corn does meet a horrible end.
Yeah, it gets
And-
blown up, but Michael Jai White has a big grin on his
He
face
as he looks up and goes, "Cream corn, no!"
and it's so out of character. It's the only time you see him smile in the entire film, and it's great.
Like
Yeah.
it's almost
Other
like
that, other than that, and his another runner up for my favorite scene, the defeat of Fiendish Doctor Wu when he throws a weapon off screen before he enters, and they're talking for like a solid minute before it hits him, and then he just looks so giddy as he hops over his agonized like figure. Ha! I threw that shit before I came in the room.
he's like, "I nailed that."
He's so giddy. He does a little jump too, which I just love.
Another scene with Gloria, I believe.
Gloria.
Yeah, Gloria. One testament to why Erin was right about her being such a great character was that sort of kind of romantic side plot where eventually they walk through the park. She vows that it's not going to go any further than that, and then
Immediately goes
It-
further than that.
goes further than that, and it's followed by an animated music video that has those two characters resembling pictures right out of the Kama Sutra.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Just all the angles and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think basically a tie for favorite scene with me, along with like the aforementioned scene I already brought up, is the Black Dynamite explaining his time in Vietnam. That is some of the best comedic writing ever. Like the constant insistence on saying Chinese, even though it's in Vietnam. Black Dynamite bringing up the boy's last words and accurately saying them in Vietnamese and saying, I don't know, it's Chinese or something. And
That was some cartoon shit.
yeah, and the people who that actually was Vietnamese that Michael Jai White says. And
really?
yes, if you translate it, it's literally, "I'm not saying that, you dumb piece of shit."
I love that.
Which is like one of the and like they never bring that up. You'd have to know Vietnamese to say that because they don't subtitle it at all either.
Because we had the subtitles going in this movie, and it was still saying stuff like speaking fake Chinese.
Yeah, so I just love that. No, this movie nails every angle of it because, as we said, 2000s were a dark time for comedy. Wasn't a lot of great stuff. It wasn't until the very end of the 2000s, going into 2010s, that we finally started to get good studio comedies again. Obviously, the most obvious person we can thank for that is probably Judd Apatow, who started to bring out hit after hit of like good comedy.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw a good comedy film that was like newer during that time period was when I saw Superbad, and I was like, "Oh, this is good."
Oh yeah. Classic, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Some of Jonah Hill's best work, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that movie is aged fantastically as well because it just feels so real to the teenage experience. Even if some stuff is obviously updated since the film came out, it still feels very modern and very accurate with how teenagers like act.
Yeah.
The soccer scene is still an all-time favorite for me, where they're just trying to talk and the one guy's like, "Come on, get your head in the game," and he's like, "It's fucking soccer, dude. It's gym soccer.
And
Calm
then
down."
The whole McLovin scene is like a perfect portrayal of teenage exasperation.
Mhm.
Like Jonah Hill's like, "You're not McLovin. That's a made-up fucking fairy tale name. You fuck."
Yeah, and like his
Hawaii,
yeah license.
driver's license.
The reactions in that film feel very genuine.
Yeah, like, "You look like a future pedophile." That's number one. Number
Yeah.
two, doesn't even have a full name on it. Just says McLovin.
You fucking share? It's
No, it's Seal.
Oh yeah,
He's like, "What are you, Seal?"
yeah. And someone brings it up. That's right. The Cher joke comes later. Just one name, like Cher. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, "It's between that and or Muhammad." Why the fuck would it be between that and Muhammad? Muhammad's one of the most common names around. Read a fucking book for once.
Yeah, no, it's great. That Pineapple Express. A lot of the
Pineapple Express is hilarious.
a lot of the Judd Apatow output during that time really redeems it.
Ken
and the
Ken
indie
Jeong
studio comedies, everything Edgar Wright was doing.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead really kicked it off,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
World's End.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bit later, but still
Yeah.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked about it briefly earlier, but the cinematography of Black Dynamite is really a strong point.
Oh yeah, it knows when it needs to be good and it knows when it needs to be bad. Like deliberately blurred camera, terrible zooms and focuses, shoddy, shaky camera, but it's always when it's at the funniest and never when it's at the most frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we were also going to mention the cinematography because it knows, as Daulton said, it knows when to be good and when to be bad. Because the fight scenes are well choreographed.
And the
They're really-
camera is just shaky enough during those fight scenes.
Yeah, it's not like too shaky where it's going to give you vertigo, but it's not like just standing still.
It's not a Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah. It's time for Richie to bitch about modern martial arts movies made by Americans specifically. It's time for Richie to tell
Richie's
you.
Rant Corner.
I'm gonna kick back for the rare Richie rant. We don't get these this much.
Why do people think that fast cuts mean that it's more suspenseful or more adrenaline pumping? No, it isn't. It just means you can't see the fucking shots.
Yeah.
Half the joy of a good martial arts movie is seeing long, focused shots of two people throwing hands and looking cool. You cannot take in the choreography without long enough shots to appreciate it. And smarter people than me have pointed this out. Hi, Jeff Thu from Mother's Basement. But That's a reason that movies like, say, the Dragon Ball Evolution movie suck balls. It's like...
They don't show the characters' fighting styles well enough.
They don't. And, like, it's like, maybe if it's fast enough, we can hypnotize our viewers into thinking they're watching heart-pumping action instead of incomprehensible nonsense. No, that's not how you do it. Like, anyone who has seen a single Hong Kong movie can tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
Hard Boiled, Old Boy. Well, that's Korean. Old Boy's Korean, but you get it. That same sort of style. Fucking Rush Hour got this right.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it had faster cuts, it knew to stick to shots longer.
Shanghai Nights?
Yes. Shanghai Noon, by the way, is another candidate for this show. If you haven't seen that. Huh?
I haven't seen it.
Have you seen Shanghai Nights?
Nope.
Really?
Have-
Jackie Chan, Owen Wilson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was Shanghai Noon.
Is one of those a sequel or something?
It's a Western with Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan.
Yeah,
is
it's
the
like a
one
Western martial arts period piece.
It does remind me of a modern day version of Red Sun.
It's really good, though. It's really
Yeah, we gotta... That is definitely gonna be on our list.
Some
But-
of Jackie Chan's best Hollywood choreography.
But yeah, I'm just gonna end my rant by saying, all of you guys who are doing that sort of coked out, over caffeinated, fast cut bullshit, Black Dynamite, the parody, has beat you. Step up.
All right. Unless anyone else has anything to say, I think we can go out of spoiler territory before wrapping this up.
One other thing to say that I love about this movie is the scenes where the camera cuts from one person to another, and like it cuts back to the same person, but they have like different, like they're not crying or like something's different, or their makeup's different.
Like the tear off of
Yeah.
Honeybee's
Mm-hmm.
eye.
Yeah, where it's like one take she's crying, another take she isn't.
And then the tears back on her face in the next shot.
Yeah. Good continuity jokes. It understands it. It reminds me of the red black scene from Kung Pao. I can change people's clothing color just by uttering a single word.
Really underrated, by the way. That
Another candidate, because Erin hasn't seen it.
I wouldn't say that's my favorite ever. Like, it's not as highbrow as this. It's
No.
not very... Like,
I don't think it's meant to be.
No, it isn't.
its jokes are much more overtly tongue-in-cheek, but it's still funny.
Yeah, that movie also knows the fine line because it makes it so over your head that it becomes funny again.
I like Steve Odenkirk, too.
Yeah, underrated.
Like, I know that people have mixed thoughts on stuff like Barnyard, but I thought that show was decently funny. It was... I mean, it was kind of standard. It had
was a little past our time.
Yeah.
It was a little... It had a very old-school slapstick sense of humor, but it had a good one, and if you don't mind me being a voice acting nerd for a second, Cam Clark playing the paranoid ferret.
Fair.
Always love me some Cam Clark, especially when half of his scenes are being a double act with Rob Paulson.
Yeah. All right, so we good to head out of spoiler territory?
I think so.
I believe so.
All right, so... Oh, right now, perfect at this mark. We got a good, easy way to get back to out of spoiler territory you can see on the thing. So, yeah, closing thoughts on it and wrapping it up. Second time for myself watching this film, just as enjoyable, if not more so. The second time around, noticing all the fun stuff that I missed the first time, you know?
I enjoyed this movie. It was, as we can see, it's my first time watching. I laughed a lot. I had a lot of fun watching this. It's very entertaining, very funny. And if you're like a film geek like I am, you can appreciate all the little creative quirks that they put into this. Like, as we mentioned, how funny the cinematography is, trying to make it look cheap, and all that stuff. So, yeah, I had fun with this. I enjoyed it.
Cool. And before we get back to Richie, who will close us out, once again, for those of you who didn't hear me earlier, you can watch this film on HBO Max. You can also watch it on Amazon Prime, from what I was able to see. And, you know, there's always VPNs to get around certain region locks. And yeah, buy it on Blu-ray or DVD. And back to Rich for the closing thoughts of his and what we're going to be doing next time.
As Daulton had said before, the second time is definitely the charm with this one. I laughed just as much as the scenes that got me the first time, but there were things that hit me the second time even harder. And if you don't mind me getting sappy for a moment, part of the joy of revisiting these things is always seeing fresh reactions from the two of you.
Oh, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Your laughter is just the most genuine pleasure I get out of this, because it means that we're really being brought together by a mutually joyous and hilarious experience.
Well, yeah, it's our love of film and film scores that brings this whole thing together, you know?
Yeah.
And our love of actually well-crafted comedy, which I think will make us an excellent transition to our first entry into musical month.
Woo! Musical March, baby!
Woo!
And Erin, once again, will be the uninitiated one, as Daulton and I present her with the question, a very salient question: what if Walk the Line and Spinal Tap had a baby? Well, look out, man, because next time on Killer Score, we will be covering Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
A musical comedy and parody of the biopic formula, considered so salient and pointed that it basically killed that format of biopic.
Until Rocket Man came out.
Of course.
Which also went a completely different direction from the stale Hollywood biopic formula that this film is mocking the hell out of.
It'll be either next weekend or the weekend after. Stay tuned.